A young nurse donated her kidney to a patient not knowing. He was the lonely CEO millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the operating room as white light flooded over stainless steel instruments. Monitors beeped softly, steady, rhythmic. Anna Monroe stood at the glass window, her palms damp inside her latex gloves. She wasn't supposed to be nervous. She'd been a nurse for almost 3 years, but today wasn't just another shift. It was the day she was giving away a piece of herself. "You sure you want to do this?" the surgeon had asked hours earlier. "Anonymous donation means you'll never meet the patient." Anna had only nodded. "That's the point," she'd said quietly. "It's not about who he is. It's about who he gets to be after." The signature on the consent form was still fresh in her mind as she took one last breath of clean air before anesthesia pulled her under. Somewhere, on another table, a man's life was being pulled back from the edge. When she woke up hours later, the room was dim, her throat dry, the hum of the IV steady beside her. She blinked at the white ceiling, the taste of metal on her tongue, the ache in her side sharp but purposeful. The nurse on duty smiled softly. "You did great, Anna. The transplant was a success." She managed a weak smile. "That's good," she whispered. "He's going to be okay?" The nurse hesitated. "They say he's stable." Still unconscious, but stable. Anna exhaled, eyes fluttering shut. Relief, pain, and something she couldn't quite name spread through her chest. The world outside that room didn't know her name, and she liked it that way. She'd lost her father years ago because no donor could be found in time. Maybe saving this stranger was her way of closing that wound. 2 weeks later, she returned to her normal duties at Westbridge Private Hospital, her body healing faster than her heart. Every time she passed the transplant wing, a quiet tug pulled at her, a strange curiosity she fought to ignore. Who was the man who now carried a part of her inside him? She'd never know, at least. That was the rule. But fate rarely follows the rules. Late one evening, as she was reviewing charts at the nurse's station, she overheard 2 doctors talking in low voices near the corridor. "The Carter case is improving fast," one of them said. "Guess that billionaire still has a few miracles left." The name caught her like a hook. Carter? Her pen froze above the clipboard. "You mean Ethan Carter, the CEO?" The doctors nodded, unaware she was listening. "Yeah, the same one who collapsed at the charity gala. Needed an emergency transplant. Got lucky with a perfect anonymous donor." Anna's heart skipped. She forced herself to breathe, staring down at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. Her anonymous patient was him, Ethan Carter, the youngest biotech CEO in New York, the man whose face appeared on magazine covers, who built an empire curing others yet somehow needed saving himself. A quiet storm brewed inside her, equal parts disbelief and something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. That night, as the city lights bled through the hospital windows, she sat alone in the break room, her fingers tracing the small surgical scar just below her ribs. "You saved a life," she whispered to herself. "That's all that matters." But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this story, hers and his, was far from over. Anna tried to move on, to bury the curiosity that had taken root in her chest. Each shift blurred into the next patient's, charts, rounds, the hum of fluorescent lights. Yet every time she walked past the VIP ward, she felt a pull she could not name. It was as if something in that quiet corridor called her, whispering of a connection that was more than blood. 2 weeks after she overheard the doctors talking, the hospital announced temporary staff rotation. Her supervisor handed her a new chart with a small smile. "Room 808, post-transplant observation. The patient requested limited staff, and I think you are the calmest one we have." Anna took the chart, unaware of the name printed at the top. When she reached the room, she hesitated at the door. The plaque read, "Ethan Carter." She felt her heartbeat quicken, steady beeping audible even through the door. Taking a breath, she pushed it open. The room was larger than most, softly lit by the city skyline outside. Machines hummed in rhythm, the faint scent of antiseptic mixing with the expensive cologne that lingered in the air. On the bed lay the man she had heard about, the man she unknowingly saved. His skin was pale but healthy, dark hair tousled, jaw strong beneath a trace of stubble. His eyes were closed, yet there was a peacefulness that made him seem less like a CEO and more like a man who had finally stopped running. Anna moved quietly, adjusting the IV, checking vitals. Her fingers brushed against the pulse monitor, and for a brief second she felt a strange warmth. He stirred slightly, a faint sound escaping his lips. She froze. "Mr. Carter?" she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, slow, disoriented, deep gray, like a storm waiting to break. "Where am I?" His voice was low, rough. "You are at Westbridge Hospital," she said softly. "You have been through a kidney transplant. You are safe." He studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering as if searching for something familiar. "You are not like the others," he murmured. "You do not look afraid to be here." Anna smiled faintly. "I have seen worse than hospital silence." He let out a weak chuckle. "You must be new." "Not exactly. Just borrowed for your care," she replied. For the next few days, she became his constant presence, quiet, steady, never intrusive. She reminded him to breathe deeply during therapy, to eat even when he insisted he was not hungry. He started talking more, asking about small things, the weather, the city at night, the sound of rain on hospital windows. "Do you ever think about what people do with their second chances?" he asked one evening as she adjusted his blanket. "Every day," she said. "Sometimes they waste them. Sometimes they use them to heal others." He looked at her curiously. "You talk like someone who knows." She shrugged. "Maybe I do." Outside the window, snow began to fall again, soft, slow flakes against the glow of the city. Ethan turned his head slightly. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Someone who believed kindness still meant something." Anna smiled, but her chest tightened. Maybe that someone was right. After her shift, she lingered outside his door for a moment, hearing the faint sound of the monitor through the glass. She had promised herself not to get involved, but the universe clearly had other plans. Inside, Ethan stared at the ceiling, a strange comfort settling in. For the first time since the surgery, he slept without nightmares. Across the hall, Anna sat at the nurse's station, touching the small scar near her ribs, unaware that the man in room 808 now carried not just her kidney, but the beginning of her heart. The following week passed quietly, like a slow breath between storms. Ethan regained strength faster than the doctors expected, walking short distances with a cane and a stubborn determination that made the staff both admire and fear him a little. But around Anna, he was different, softer, less guarded. There was something in the way she spoke, calm, steady, never rushing him, that pulled him out of the noise of his own thoughts. One afternoon, as she replaced the dressing near his surgical scar, he studied her face in silence. "You move like someone who has done this 1,000 times, he said. "Maybe I have," she replied with a gentle smile. "It is kind of my job." "No," he said quietly. "You care differently." Anna paused, unsure how to respond. "Caring is part of the uniform," she said lightly. But his eyes stayed on her, searching. "Not like this," he murmured. "Most people look at me and see a title, a company, a name in a magazine. You look at me and see a person." Her breath caught for a second, but she hid it with a soft laugh. "You are a patient, Mr. Carter. I see numbers on a chart, not headlines." "Ethan," he corrected. "Just Ethan." After that day, he refused to let her call him anything else. Over the next few days, he began walking down the hospital corridor, leaning on his cane, passing nurses who whispered behind their masks. The once untouchable CEO was now a man in slippers, counting steps and breaths. Anna watched him quietly, pride mixing with something warmer. Sometimes, when he struggled, she would walk beside him without saying a word, her presence enough to keep him steady. One evening, as the sun sank behind the skyline, Ethan sat by the window, staring at the orange light bleeding through the blinds. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "why some people survive when others do not?" Anna set down the chart she was updating. "I used to ask that," she said softly. "Then I realized maybe we are not meant to understand it. Maybe we are just meant to make the most of the time we are given." "You sound like someone who lost something," he said. "Someone who had to start over." She nodded slowly. "I lost my father to kidney failure. No donor came in time. He used to say that healing others was how we heal ourselves." Ethan looked at her, a strange light in his eyes. "Your father was a wise man." She smiled faintly. He was. I hope I am making him proud. There was a long silence, the kind that feels comfortable. Ethan turned back to the window, his reflection faint in the glass. You know, before the surgery I was not really living. I had the company, the penthouse, the cars, but I felt empty. Now every time I breathe it feels borrowed, like I owe someone a life. Maybe you do not owe anyone, Anna said gently. Maybe someone just wanted you to have another chance. His gaze drifted back to her, soft, curious. And what would you do if you were me? I would start with gratitude, she said, and maybe find a way to give something back. Later that night, after her shift ended, Anna passed by his room one last time. Through the glass, she saw him writing something in a small leather notebook. She could not see the words, but she recognized the intent, his gratitude journal. She smiled to herself and walked away, not realizing that the act of caring she considered routine had already begun to rewrite both of their lives. Inside the room, Ethan set down the pen and stared at the scar on his abdomen. He pressed his hand over it, feeling the rhythm of a heart that beat with two stories instead of one. Whoever you are, he whispered into the quiet, thank you for the second chance. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes catching the glow of city lights, and in that hush, something invisible connected them, a bond neither could name yet, but both would soon feel. Winter melted slowly into spring, and with it came the quiet rhythm of recovery. Ethan's strength returned, though his steps were still cautious, his body relearning how to trust itself. Every morning Anna would check on him, clipboard in hand, her tone professional but her eyes always warm. She noticed the way he began to greet the nurses by name, how he thanked the custodians who cleaned his room, small gestures that showed the man inside the Millionaire was beginning to change. One morning, she found him standing near the window without his cane, sunlight brushing against his face. You should not be up without support, she said, half scolding. He turned with a grin that caught her off guard. You said I should trust my body again. I am trying. She shook her head but smiled. At least let me be here if you fall. Deal, he said softly. That afternoon, Ethan asked if he could take a short walk outside the hospital garden. The doctors approved, and Anna volunteered to accompany him. The courtyard was filled with early blooms, the scent of lilac and fresh earth mixing in the air. They walked slowly along the path, the sound of his steps echoing against the stone walkway. You know, he said, before all this, I never noticed how quiet the world can be when you stop trying to control it. Anna looked at him, intrigued. What changed? He smiled faintly. You. You make silence feel safe. The words caught her off guard, and for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. She tried to turn the conversation away, asking about his company, but he stopped walking and faced her. Do you ever think about leaving the hospital life behind? He asked. Doing something just for you? She hesitated. This is my life. It is what I am good at. That is not what I asked, he said gently. I asked what you want. Anna looked away, her gaze falling on the garden fountain where sunlight shimmered across the water. I want to open a small wellness clinic one day, she admitted. A place where people without insurance can get care without fear of debt collectors at their door. My father used to dream about something like that. Ethan nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. That sounds like something the world needs. When they returned inside, something between them had shifted, a thread of understanding that did not need words. Over the next few days, Ethan insisted on doing more of his therapy with her present. He said she made the air easier to breathe. She laughed but stayed. Late one evening, after his final check, she found a small folded paper on the table near his bed. Inside, in Ethan's neat handwriting, were the words, "For every scar that gave us another day, thank you." She stared at it longer than she should have, her heart aching in ways she could not explain. The next morning, the hospital director called her into the office. Anna, you have been reassigned, he said. Your patient is being discharged in 3 days. Her chest tightened. That is wonderful, she said, forcing a smile, but inside she felt something crack. On his last day, she came to his room with the final discharge papers. Ethan was dressed in a dark sweater, his hair neatly combed, a hint of color back in his face. So, this is goodbye, he said softly. For now, she replied, avoiding his eyes. He held out his hand. Thank you for giving me my life back. She hesitated, then shook it, her fingers brushing his in a way that felt like a promise. As he walked out of the hospital doors, sunlight spilled over him, bright and endless. Anna stood at the window, watching him disappear into the city beyond, unaware that the part of her she thought she had hidden was now walking away with him. 2 months passed after Ethan's discharge, and the hospital felt quieter without him. Anna returned to her routine, but the days no longer held the same rhythm. The sound of monitors, the smell of antiseptic, even the sight of the empty room, 808 all of it, reminded her of him. She told herself it was normal, that nurses were supposed to move on, but every night as she closed her locker, she found her fingers tracing the folded note he had left behind. One rainy afternoon, as she was finishing her shift, Dr. Harris approached her with an envelope in hand. "Anna, there is someone who requested you for a private consultation. It is outside the hospital, but the foundation approved it. He said it was personal." She frowned, curious, but accepted. The address led her to a new medical facility downtown, sleek and modern, with glass walls that shimmered under the gray sky. Inside, the receptionist smiled. "Welcome to the Carter Wellness Center. Mr. Carter is expecting you." Her heart skipped a beat. When she entered the office, Ethan stood by the window, dressed in a simple shirt, no tie, no arrogance, just calm confidence. "You kept your promise," he said softly, turning to her. "You wanted a place where people could get help without fear. So, I built one." She blinked, speechless, scanning the logo on the wall that read Carter Wellness, healing without barriers. "You did this?" she asked. "You inspired it?" he said. "I could have written a check, but I wanted to build something that mattered. You gave me a reason to live. This is me giving life back." Anna felt her throat tighten. "You did not have to. I wanted to," he interrupted gently. "You taught me that gratitude means action." He walked closer, his expression soft. "And I wanted you to run it. Be the head nurse. Design the programs. Make it yours." She stared at him, overwhelmed. "Ethan, I cannot, you can," he said firmly. "You already changed one life. Imagine how many more you could change with this." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, unable to speak. Over the next few weeks, they worked side by side, building the clinic from the ground up. She designed patient programs. He managed the funding. Every evening they stayed late, sharing coffee and stories under the hum of office lights. Slowly, the professional distance between them dissolved into something gentler. One night, as they locked up, the city lights reflecting in the glass, Ethan turned to her. "You know, I used to think strength meant doing everything alone," he said. "Now I know it means letting someone in." Anna looked at him, her pulse quickening. "You let a lot of people in," she teased. "Patients, staff, the world." He smiled. "Not like this." The air grew still between them, filled with unspoken truth. Then he stepped back, his voice quiet but steady. "There is something else I need to tell you." He opened a folder on the table, revealing medical documents. "I had the transplant file unsealed," he said. "I know who my donor was." Anna froze, her breath caught. "Ethan, it was you," he said softly. "You gave me your kidney. You gave me my life." She stood silent, the truth hanging heavy in the air. "I never wanted you to find out," she whispered. "I did not do it for gratitude." "I know," he said. "That is what makes it mean everything." He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I thought I had lost faith in people, in love, in everything that makes life worth living. But you," his voice faltered slightly, "you brought it back." Anna felt tears spill down her cheeks, and for the first time, she did not hide them. "You do not owe me anything," she said. Ethan shook his head. "I do not want to repay you. I just want to walk beside you wherever life takes us." The silence that followed was full, alive, and healing. Outside, the rain stopped, leaving only the faint shimmer of streetlights on wet pavement. Inside the new clinic they had built together, two hearts that once beat apart now found their rhythm as one. The days that followed were quiet but charged with something neither Anna nor Ethan could ignore. They worked together as if they had always been a team, moving through the new clinic with the rhythm of people who shared not just a mission but a heartbeat. Patients came and went, the halls filled with laughter and stories of hope. Ethan often watched Anna from his office window, her gentle tone bringing calm to frightened families, her steady hands guiding every recovery. It amazed him that the woman who had saved his life now spent her days saving others without expecting anything in return. One evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Ethan called her into his office. "I have something to show you," he said, gesturing toward the computer screen. It displayed the clinic's monthly report. Dozens of patients treated, hundreds of families helped, "This is because of you," he said quietly. "Because you believed kindness still works." Anna smiled softly. "It is because we both did." He hesitated, then reached into his drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. "Before you panic," he said quickly, seeing her expression, "it is not what you think." "Not yet." He opened it to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm engraved with the words, "Our Second Life." She froze, recognizing the phrase immediately. "Ethan, it is to remind you that we are connected not just by what happened, but by what we choose to build from it," he said. She ran her fingers over the charm, emotion tightening her throat. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." He smiled but did not push further. They stood there for a long moment, the space between them thick with everything unsaid. A few days later, news spread through the clinic that an investigative journalist had arrived, asking questions about the funding of the Carter Wellness Center. Ethan met the man in the lobby, his calm demeanor masking his irritation. "Transparency is part of our mission," he said evenly. "But if you are here looking for a scandal, you will not find one." The journalist smirked. "People will always be curious why a billionaire suddenly grows a conscience." Anna overheard the conversation from the hallway, her heart twisting. She knew Ethan's wealth had made him a target before, but hearing the cold skepticism stung. That evening she found him alone in his office, staring at the city lights. "You cannot let them get to you," she said softly. He looked up weary. "It is not about them. It is about proving that what we are doing here is real, that it matters." She stepped closer. "It already matters. You are living proof." He met her eyes, his voice low. "And you are the reason I am still here to prove it." Their gaze held for what felt like forever. Then he whispered, almost afraid to break the silence. "Anna, do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not been my donor?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe someone else would have saved you." He shook his head. "No, I do not think so." The words hung in the air like a confession neither of them was ready to name. Later that night, as she locked up the clinic, Anna found herself standing by the glass doors, watching the reflection of the city lights ripple across the floor. She touched the bracelet on her wrist, the engraved charm cool against her skin. In the quiet, she realized something she had tried to deny for weeks. Her heart no longer belonged solely to the work or to the memory of her father's dream. It belonged, in ways she could not undo, to the man who now carried a part of her inside him. Across the city, in his apartment overlooking the same skyline, Ethan held a copy of his gratitude journal. The page opened to a single line, "She gave me more than a life, she gave me purpose." He closed the book slowly, looking out at the night, and whispered her name like a prayer. Two souls, once strangers connected by a single act of kindness, now beat in rhythm with something far greater than fate. Weeks later, the Carter Wellness Center was busier than ever. Anna's name had become known among patients for her warmth and compassion, while Ethan's reputation as a reformed CEO spread quietly through the city. But success always attracts shadows. One Friday morning, a financial report landed on Ethan's desk. An anonymous donor had tried to funnel a suspicious amount through the clinic's charity fund. He frowned, sensing trouble. "Anna," he said later that day, "I need to ask you something important. Have you noticed anyone tampering with the donation accounts?" She shook her head, puzzled. "No, everything looked normal when I checked last week." He sighed. "Someone is trying to use this place to clean money. If the media finds out, everything we built could fall apart." That night, long after the staff had gone home, Ethan stayed behind, scanning transaction records. Anna found him still at his desk, exhaustion in his eyes. "You cannot carry this alone," she said softly. "Let me help." He looked up. "If this leaks, it could ruin you too." "Then we fix it before it does," she said firmly. Together, they combed through files until the clock struck midnight. Finally, Anna spotted a transfer linked to one of Ethan's former board members, a man he had fired months before the accident. "It was him," she whispered. Ethan clenched his jaw. "He must be trying to frame me, to make it look like this clinic is a fraud." The revelation hit him hard. He always said I was too idealistic, that kindness does not belong in business. Maybe he wants to prove he was right. Anna placed a hand on his arm, then prove him wrong. The next day, Ethan met with his lawyer and turned over the evidence to authorities. Within 48 hours, the board member was arrested for embezzlement. News outlets picked up the story, but instead of scandal, headlines read, "Carter CEO exposes corruption within his own circle." Still, the stress took its toll. Ethan became distant, quiet. quieter, as if the weight of his past refused to let him rest. One evening, Anna found him alone in the clinic's meditation room, sitting in the dim light. "You won," she said gently. "You did the right thing." He looked up, his voice rough. "Every time I fight my past, I feel like I lose a piece of myself." "Maybe that is how healing works," she said softly. "You do not erase the scars, you learn to live with them." He smiled faintly. "You always know what to say." She sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching. The silence between them felt heavy but safe. "You once told me you lost your father," he said. "Do you ever think about him when you are here?" "All the time," she admitted. "Every patient who walks out of here alive feels like one more chance to make him proud." He nodded slowly. "I think he would be proud already." The air shifted. Something in his tone made her chest ache. "Anna," he said finally, "there is something I need to confess. When I first learned you were my donor, I wanted to run. I did not think I deserved the life you gave me. But now I cannot imagine my days without you in them." She turned toward him, eyes glistening. "Ethan, you do not have to say anything," he whispered. "I just needed you to know." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of rain began tapping against the windows, steady and soft. Finally, she reached over and took his hand. "Maybe neither of us deserved this second chance," she said. "But we got it anyway. Let us not waste it." He squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise passing between them. Outside, the rain eased, and the city lights shimmered through the mist, as if blessing two souls learning to love again after losing everything. The next morning, the clinic buzzed with energy as reporters gathered in the courtyard. Ethan had announced a press conference to introduce a new initiative, the Open Hands Program, a nationwide charity project providing free health care for underprivileged families. Anna stood beside him on the stage, unaware of what he truly planned to reveal. The sun reflected off the glass facade behind them as the crowd quieted. Ethan stepped to the microphone, his voice steady but warm. "When this clinic opened," he began, "I thought I was creating a place to repay a debt. But I was wrong. This clinic is not about repayment. It is about rediscovery of purpose, of hope, of love." The crowd leaned in. Cameras flashed. "Months ago, I survived a transplant that should never have been possible. My life was saved by an anonymous donor. Today, I want the world to know who that person is." Anna froze, realizing too late what he was about to do. "Her name is Anna Monroe," he continued, turning toward her. "She gave me her kidney without knowing who I was. She gave me the chance to live again, and every heartbeat I have now is because of her." The audience gasped, followed by a swell of applause. Anna's breath caught, her cheeks burning. "Ethan," she whispered under her breath, but he continued. "She taught me that wealth means nothing without compassion, that healing begins with humility, and that love, real love, is an act, not a promise." He reached into his pocket and unfolded a piece of paper. "This clinic will now bear her name. From today, it will be known as the Anna Monroe Foundation for Healing and Hope." The audience erupted into cheers, the sound echoing through the courtyard. Anna stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as the truth of what he had done sank in. When the applause finally subsided, Ethan turned to her, his eyes soft. "I hope you can forgive me for not keeping this between us," he said quietly. "The world deserves to know what true selflessness looks like." She shook her head, half laughing, half crying. "You did not have to do this." "I know," he said. "That is why I wanted to." After the press event, they retreated to his office, away from the cameras. Anna leaned against the window, still overwhelmed. "You blindsided me," she said, her voice trembling. Ethan smiled faintly. "Would you have let me do it if I had asked?" She sighed. "Probably not. Then I made the right choice." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of the city outside. "You should have told me," she said softly. "I did not want fame or attention. I just wanted people to live. And now they will," he said gently, "because of you." She turned to face him, the emotion in her chest almost too much to bear. "Ethan, I never wanted gratitude. I wanted to keep something pure." "Then, let this stay pure," he said. "This is not about headlines. It is about truth. I owe my life to you, Anna, and not just my body but my heart. I tried to hide it, but I cannot anymore." His voice faltered, the vulnerability raw in every word. "I love you, not because you saved me, but because you saw me before anyone else did." Her breath hitched as he stepped closer. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. "You are impossible," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "And you are unforgettable," he replied, his hand brushing away one of her tears. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Now," he said softly, "we stop running from the miracle we were given." Outside, applause still echoed faintly through the halls. But in that quiet office, the only sound that mattered was the shared heartbeat of two people who had finally found where they belonged. Months passed, and the name Anna Monroe Foundation for Healing and Hope had become a beacon in the city. People traveled from miles away seeking care, kindness, and a place where hope felt real again. Under Anna's direction, the clinic expanded into a network of outreach programs, and every corner of the building reflected her compassion. Ethan, now fully recovered, worked beside her, not as a CEO sitting above the world, but as a man finally at peace within it. Every morning, he arrived early to help serve coffee to patients in the waiting room, a ritual that made the staff smile. He had changed, and everyone could see it. One evening, as the clinic prepared to close, Anna walked through the quiet halls, her heels echoing softly against the polished floors. The walls were lined with photos of families who had been helped, each image a story of survival. She paused at one of them, a little boy holding a sign that said, "Thank you for saving my mom." Her eyes misted. Behind her, a familiar voice spoke. "He is not the only one you saved." She turned to see Ethan standing there, holding a small velvet box. Her heart skipped. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He smiled gently. "Something I should have done a long time ago." He stepped closer, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You once said healing others is how we heal ourselves. You healed me, Anna. Not just my body, but everything I thought was too broken to fix." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant, with a silver band that shimmered under the clinic lights. "This is not about repayment or gratitude," he said. "It is about choosing you, the woman who turned her pain into purpose, the woman who gave me a second chance at life and love." Anna covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. "Ethan," he smiled softly, "I am not asking for forever today, just the next step of whatever life gives us. Will you take it with me?" She nodded, unable to speak, her tears shining under the soft light. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was quiet, full of every word they had left unspoken. "I guess this means we both got our second life," she whispered against his chest. "No," he said with a faint smile. "It means we finally started living our first one." The next morning, news spread of their engagement, and the clinic celebrated with laughter and music. Patients brought flowers. The staff surprised them with a handmade banner that read, "Love heals too." Later that day, as the sun set over the city, Ethan led Anna to the rooftop garden they had built for recovering patients. The air was warm, filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. "Do you ever think about how strange it is?" he asked, his hand brushing hers. "A stranger's kindness turned into this." Anna smiled, leaning against him. "Maybe kindness was never meant to be small. Maybe it was always meant to lead us somewhere." He looked at her, eyes full of quiet wonder. "Home?" he said simply. She nodded. "Home." As the city lights flickered below them, Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The camera of the world might have seen a CEO and a nurse, but the truth was simpler. They were just two souls who had learned that love is not found in grand gestures or riches, but in the quiet moments when one heart keeps another alive. The night deepened, stars appearing one by one, and in that silent rooftop glow, the story that began with a selfless act of giving ended not with farewell but with a promise. A promise that kindness, once given, never truly ends, it only multiplies.